Hello viewers, I'm Aniket Kumar and I'm going to briefly explain the features of this project along with the walkthrough of the code. So let's begin. Our task was to build a basic recruiter tool for candidate management on PERN stack. Currently, this project is running locally. So let's start the project first. The first server needs to be started, and also let's simultaneously start the React app. That is the front end of this project. It will take some time to compile. So meanwhile, let me brief you through the backend. The backend, the backend servers follow a very popular framework that is the MVC architecture. It has primarily three components: model, view, and controller. Now coming to model, model is the place which handles all the data logics and interacts with the database. And this is the schema that we have used for defining candidate. It basically contains name, email, phone, status, expected salary, React node, and an array of skills qualifications. Now coming to view, this is view basically is responsible for presenting data to in the front end. And lastly, the controller. Controller acts as a intermediary between the model and the view, which handles user request and response. This controller layer contains the logic to process the incoming request, validate data, and interact with the model layer accordingly. So yes, now this is a Express app, and Express.js has been used to set up the API routes, which makes it easy to define the endpoints for CRUD operations. And this course is basically when a web page makes a request to a different domain, portal, or port that other than the one that it has originated from. So that is considered as a cross-origin request. And browsers generally restrict such requests by default due to security concerns, as they can potentially expose sensitive data or lead to unintended actions. This CORS library makes the server response with appropriate CORS header, which allows the client-side JavaScript application to make requests to server from different origins securely. Now coming to this pool comes from PG library, which is a PostgreSQL client for Node.js, which helps to establish connection between Node.js and PostgreSQL database. This pool instance is used to execute SQL query asynchronously. Now coming to this middlewares, this app.use course is like explained above, and this app.use express JSON is basically a built-in middleware provided by the Express. It parses the incoming bodies with JSON payloads and makes the parsed JSON data available on the request body property. This is particularly useful when the server receives JSON data in the incoming request body, such as in post, put, or patch request, which we'll be seeing when I will be explaining the front end of the project. Now, coming to routes, so this tells that all the URLs that has a prefix candidates will be handled by this router, and this router comes from here, candidate routes, and this is the place where all the CRUD operations have been defined. And also, there are some middlewares like validate request body, computed, and compute score. So these are responsible for handling errors, validating data, and computing score. And I will be explaining it one by one along with the front side of the project. So now coming to controllers. So controller is the place where the server decides how and what to respond. Let's go through one get request and one post request. So when there is a get request, this router will hit this point. This link will hit this point, and this get all candidates. This logic will be managed by here, where we will be querying our database using the pool library, and we'll be querying our database like select star from candidate means select everything from the candidate table and return all those candidates that has been fetched using this pool query. And similarly, let's go through a post request. So whenever there will be a post request, this will be hitting this point, and it will go through validate request body and compute score, which I'll be explaining later. And finally, this on add candidate. So this add in request body, there will be a object which will have name, email, phone, status, and till skills qualification. And this will be in request body because of the express.json middleware that we are using for every request body. So this basically we will again querying our database, and we'll be running this query as insert into candidate table with all the required field that we have received from the request body project, and then we'll basically adding this into our database table name candidate, and then we will be sending this response to the front end. So overall this can be summarized as in the front end there will be like 5 features, and depending what we are doing, we'll have this request. Like for add candidates, we'll have a post request to the server, and this server will then access the database and accordingly respond with the required thing. Like if there's a request to post candidate, then the server will query the database with the request body as the data to that needs to be added, and depending that it will return it the server will add the following data into the candidate table, and then it will return the added candidate to the front end. So let's conclude the backend, and now let's dive into the front end. Meanwhile meanwhile the front end has been compiled. So yeah, so firstly we are greeted by the home page, and primarily there are 4 to 5 multi pages in this project. and that are linked through each other through React Router DOM. So let's go through all candidate features. So in all candidate, first of all, we are using a use effect, which is a hook, which basically it gets executed whenever there is a change in the dependency array. Since the dependency array is empty, it will get only run when the page is firstly loaded. And on firstly loading, this function will run, which is fetch handler, and fetch handler basically makes an API request to this point, like makes a get request to this point, and the server will return the array of candidates. And after receiving that array of candidates, we will be using a use state hook, and we are setting that received response in the as the overall candidates. This candidates is an array of all the candidates that has been received through the server. Now, after receiving that, we are displaying the candidate by looping through the candidates one by one, and then we are displaying this into the front end. So let's have a quick look. So let's go and view all candidates, and this is how the app looks. Now coming to a candidate. So it almost same to the candidate. The only difference here is that we are making an API call to candidate underscore ID to get that particular candidate. And after getting the candidate, we're displaying the same thing that we displayed in overall all candidate feature. Now let's come to add candidate features. So in the add candidate feature, we will be filling the required form, and then it will send a post request to candidates. Let me show through the code. So yes, so basically we'll be filling this form, and then this function will send a post request to this endpoint. And after successfully adding, we will be navigating back to the all candidates page. Now there are two things that should be highlighted here. Is that first of all is that validating this body request, and second thing is that calculating the computer score to Node experience and React experience. So let's say we try to submit this form with discrepancies. We suppose didn't add a name, or expected salary is negative, or we submit the form without any skill. So let's try to do that. So let's try to fill this form. So let's say we try to fill this form without this candidate. So while we click on submit, it makes an API request to this endpoint. It makes an API request to this endpoint, and on the server side, and in the server side, it gets hit by this route. Now this, for going to till add candidate, it will have to pass through two middlewares, that is validate request body and compute score. Now coming to validate request body, this is basically a middleware, and this is the place where the request body has been checked for errors. Like suppose if the name is not available in the request body, then we will be sending this error as a message in the front end. And in the front end, go through the front end, and in the front end, if there is error, then we are setting that error message as error.response.data.error, basically the error message that we have sent from the backend. And then we are displaying at the end of the form. So basically what we are trying to tell here is that, is suppose when we have a discrepancy here, then it will have to get passed through this validation middleware. And if there is any error, like there is a missing email field, missing phone field, or expected salary is less than 0, or something like that, expected salary is less than 0, or there are no skills, then basically an error will be returned from the server side, and it won't go through the next middleware because it will be returning from here itself. So it won't go through the next middleware, and add candidate logic will never get executed. And in the front end, we will get a message saying that we missed something. So yes, so let's now try to add the name, something as and also let's go through like what are the expected errors that I've managed to add. Like expected salary is -1, then there should be a message saying expected salary should be non-negative. And let's say if there are no skills, then at least one skill should be present. So let's add skills one by one, and finally let's submit it. Now let's add one candidate, and let's go through the compute score functionality. So add skill one by one. Now, from the front end, in the node score, we are sending a string that is 1 to 2 experience, and the React score, we are also sending a string that is over 2 experience. So in the node score, it's a string, and also in the React score, it's a string. Now, in the model, we have this React score as numeric, and also the node score is numeric, but we have passed a string from the front end. So this string needs to be adjusted to its corresponding numeric score value. And for achieving that, we have one more middleware, that is the compute score middleware. Now, when the request body is successfully validated, like all the forms inputs are correctly filled, then the next middleware is called, that is compute score. Now, this compute score extracts the React score and node score from the React request body, and depending what the string value was, the numeric React score is then correspondingly defined. Like let's say it was a less than year, then React score was 1. If it was over 2 years, the React score was 3, and same to the node score as well. Now, the React score and node score numeric value has been adjusted, and then we have called this next middleware. Now, this next middleware will lead us to finally add candidate middleware. And now similarly, we are extracting all the required information from the request body, and then we are querying into our database to enter this into the candidate table. And finally, this gets added, and after successful addition, we are navigating back to the all candidates page. So after successful addition, we can see that Amir Arsad was added. And this computed score, like how this computed score has been displayed here, is that basically when we go to like candidates, and we're displaying all the candidate information. So while displaying the candidate React score, we are just passing them to as integer, as it was like 3 in string value, due to 3 in string value, and basically we are then passing them into integer and basically adding it and then displaying it. So yeah, now let's see the update feature. So let's update for this hearse. The update feature is same as the add feature, the only difference being that the forms comes with the pre-filled candidate information, and instead of making a post request, we're making a put request. And the pre-filled data is coming from the get request that we are making to this endpoint. So let's update. Let's say we want to update the name as Harsh Kumar Gupta, and the current status has been changed to hired. Also, let's add one. So we see that the name has been updated, and along with the current status and skills and qualifications. Now, lastly, we go through the delete candidate feature. So on clicking on this delete, this overlay comes from. Um, so yeah. So basically, by clicking on delete button, this show overlay is set as true, and when this is set as true, then this piece of code will get executed, which is responsible for showing the overlay. And after that, when we confirm on click confirm data, so this will so on clicking confirm data confirm delete, this will execute this function handle delete, and it will make a delete request to this URL. It will make the delete request to this URL, and after successfully deleting, it will navigate back to the candidates page. So let's see that. So yeah, so let's go to delete, and we confirm delete, and we see that Harsh Kumar Gupta has been deleted. So that's conclude the explanation of this project. So thank you for your time, and thank you for listening. Thank you.